Thank you. Welcome to Cedar Talks again. Thank you for coming back after that short break last month. This is Dr. Fred Waldstein. He's here to talk to us about the voter ID proof of voting question. I'm sure if you've been paying attention or been slightly paying attention, you've noticed it in the news in Iowa and nationally. Just want to remind you, there's no cards on the tables here. I'll get you guys no cards. And pens. If you want to take notes, if that's helpful to you, go for it. If you want to ask questions and leave them up here later, I'll collect those after our event. If you just want to doodle, that helps you concentrate. Do whatever you want with those. Those are available to you. We also have our Cedar Talks Facebook page, Cedar Talks Charles City, so you can stay updated on next month's event, things going on, things such as that. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming out and listening to this talk. This is actually an area I've developed some recent interest in, so Kate's invitation kind of prompted me to get a little more serious about it. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk through the parameters. We're going to start off walking through the parameters and changes in the new Iowa law. And then we'll talk about some broader concepts in terms of the historical evolution of changes in voter ID laws nationally. Then I'll talk a little bit about the integrity of the electoral process and the implications of that in terms of voter suppression and voter fraud. And then we'll end up with a little discussion about the whole cyber attack issue that has been so much in the news now. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So on May 5th, the governor signed into law a series of changes, and these changes include the following. The requirement to provide a photo ID when voting at the polls. Shortening the time period in which we can have early voting, so that will be somewhat more constricted than it is currently. There will no longer be the opportunity to do straight ballot voting, so everyone for your votes will have to be checked off for each of the candidates that you wish to choose for. You can't vote for a single party. And then the law begins implementation of the new technology of polling locations, and we'll get into a little bit more of this later on. So there are some inactive voters. I mean, the difference between being an active voter and an active voter, the parameters are a little bit different. So you're going to have to excuse me, given the setup here. I'm going to have to kind of have my back towards you a little bit, which I'm not used to, but that's what we have. So you can have a non-expired photo ID. Bank statements will work. Utility bills, including a cell phone bill, which is pretty ubiquitous at this point. Paycheck or government check. Other government documents. So there are a fairly wide range of ways that you can establish yourself as being eligible to vote. But there are different criteria for proof of identity and proof of residency. And it's important to understand the distinction between the two. And obviously an Iowa driver's license will work for both. Or you can have the ID card that some non-drivers use. Out-of-state driver's licenses are also okay in terms of proof of identity. Obviously, it's not good enough for proof of residency, but that is good enough, suffices for proof of identity. U.S. military ID, student ID issued by high schools or colleges, and this has been caused a little bit of confusion. Some people don't understand that actually a college or high school identification card is accepted under this new state law. Now we want to turn briefly to proof of residence. If you have a lease, that will, the terms of the lease is sufficient as long as your name is on it and signed. Utility bill, including again a cell phone bill, bank statements. So quite naturally there's some similarity between proof of identity and proof of residence. Property tax statements is obviously useful. So now voters who are unable to show required documents also have the right to vote. If you don't meet all of those requirements, you can still sign a provisional ballot until such time as the authenticity of your eligibility is established. Another issue that's been quite prominent in the news recently is the idea that convicted felons in Iowa cannot vote unless the governor makes a particular effort to reinstate them. And that's been a source of confusion in the sense that we have had some people who have come out of the criminal justice system and just assumed that they were eligible to vote. And there have been some people who try to vote, and that's been a source of confusion. But again, you can request, an individual in that situation is able to request a provisional ballot and is able to cast a vote, and then once it's sorted out, that person won't be charged with fraud, for example, if they try to vote when we're unsure of their particular status. So those are basically the changes in the law. I don't know if anybody has any questions at this particular point in time.
How does this affect undocumented workers, especially those who avoid immigration?
Well, undocumented workers aren't eligible to vote in any case, so they would not be. I mean, one of the reasons for establishing these laws is the fear that undocumented people are voting. I'll show you in a minute that there's very little evidence that, in fact, that really happens. But, yeah.
Have there been any felons who've had their voter rights restored since Grandstad's election?
He has restored rights in the past. Whether he has since he's been this last re-election, I don't know the answer to that. I haven't followed that. So let me just give you a historical overview of the voter ID issue. I mean, it's relatively new in our country's history. And it really starts back in the 1950s. South Carolina was the first state to require some kind of voter ID, a more formal process. Most of us, for example, in Iowa, we just show up and they cross our names off the registration and then we go vote. But obviously that's not going to be the case anymore. They'll certainly check your registration, but you're also going to have to document the authenticity of your identity. So really this kind of got underway in 2000. What happened in 2000? We had the Bush-Gore election, and the whole problem of hanging chads in Florida, and obviously the case ultimately, the court, the election was ultimately decided in the Supreme Court of the United States. Not something that we would normally like to think would be the most optimal way to resolve an electoral process in a democratic society. And so there was a lot of interest kindled in how can we improve our voting system to keep this from happening again. There were a number of commissions, a number of reports. Probably the best known was the Carter-Ford Commission, and they spent a great deal of time looking at election reform issues in general, and as a result of their report, one of their recommendations was improved verification of voter identification at polling places. And so this whole initiative was in part stimulated by this bipartisan commission. So based largely on that report and other studies, Congress did pass the Help America Vote Act in 2002. President Bush signed it into law, and there were several provisions that are relevant with this particular law. The requirements for states on voting systems, voter information, and provisional voting and voter registration were set for the very first time. There were some guidelines that were established. One provision of HAVA made clear that the states are free to adopt more stringent election administration requirements than those imposed by the federal law. So the federal law imposed some restrictions, but it said that states are free to impose more stringent restrictions if they think that's in their best interest. And the Supreme Court then ruled that, in fact, an Indiana law which required photo ID was, in fact, valid, and that was upheld by the Supreme Court in Crawford versus Marion County in 2008. So here you have a map which gives you just an idea a little bit. This is from 2016. This is before, for example, Iowa created its change, but there's a fairly broad range of requirements that different states have. States have always had the responsibility of taking care of elections in their states, and some states have differences at the county level. So it's quite a hodgepodge that we have here in terms of different states and the different election laws that we see in the United States. Oops. So New York University has a Brennan Center, which is very well known for tracking some of these activities. It's part of their law school at New York University. So there are a number, you can see that there are a number of states that are making more stringent regulations in terms of voting requirements. 2017 study found that the adoption of voter ID laws is most likely to occur when control of the governor's office and the state legislature switch to Republicans, and when the state Black and Latino population in the states increase. So those are two vectors that have been the most significant in predicting that more stringent laws will be undertaken. Representative Reiser from Iowa, using the State House, steered the bill through the Iowa House. This is a quote from him. "It is true that there isn't widespread voter fraud, but there is a perception that the system can be cheated. And most of that drumbeat has come from the Republican side of the aisle, actually, that this concern for potential voter fraud." The previous comment or note about these changes that tend to be enforced under Republican administration confirms that. And this has led others to kind of appreciate that, well, I'll just read the quote. "It seems strange that someone who created the problem of perception then says we have to solve the problem when there is no problem to begin with." So the perception of fraud is one that obviously could create some issues with respect to how good we feel about our electoral process. If there's a lot of concern, whether it's real or perceived, perception is reality in these kinds of instances. representation issue. One is the integrity of the system and suppression of the vote. And then integrity of the system and voter fraud. So we'll just take these in order. Obviously, anytime you change the law, there's going to be some uncertainty in the process. Anytime you change anything, whether you move across the street or whatever, these changes create some uncertainty about how we're going to behave or what we should do differently. And again, Secretary of State Paul Pate, who's really been a strong advocate for these changes, seems to acknowledge this in the fact that there's going to be kind of a gradual rollout of the changes. So beginning this particular fall with school board elections and city council elections, there'll be some effort to try and encourage people to register, but they won't be penalized if they don't have their photo ID. But then again, by the next gubernatorial cycle in the primary season, people will need to have their photo ID if they expect to vote. Which is a little bit ironic because traditionally primaries have always been the tools of parties. They haven't been part of official government. And this is, it'll be interesting to see how the courts respond to this, if there are any challenges to this in the primary process. Now, certainly parties use the government's tools in selecting their candidates for office, but typically primaries are not considered official government programs. They're considered party programs. So the next thing I want to do is talk a little bit about voter suppression. Obviously, if you live in a democracy, there's a lot of value in having people vote and participate. It challenges the legitimacy of the process if you don't allow people to participate. So this is counterintuitive that if you want to restrict votes, one can make the argument that it's counterintuitive to the electoral process. So you should be figuring out ways to encourage more people to vote, not trying to keep more people from not voting. And then there are also charges that this has been used and targeted to minimize the opportunities for some people to participate in the process, the poor, the undereducated, and of course this all has a little bit of a din to what happened in the Jim Crow South when we had poll taxes and there was a lot of discouragement or prohibition from African Americans from voting. And there are certain people that argue that this is a conservative reaction to that after the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s and 70s, which were designed to encourage and promote greater participation by disenfranchised minorities. This is an interesting quote here. I think it gets to that point. That there certainly is an element in the country that is quite happy not to have maximum participation in a democratic society. And again, I would argue that this is very counterintuitive to what we would think about when we want to extol the virtues of a democratic society. We need participation to maximize the legitimacy of what's going on. So what does the research show about voter suppression? Like many academic studies, it kind of is all over the map, but the bottom line is there doesn't seem to be a great deal of evidence that voter suppression has a tremendous impact. That's not to say it doesn't, we just don't have a lot of evidence to that. One report that, one of the more stringent reports that looked at this actually did find that there was a decline in Kansas and in Tennessee, Kansas by 1.9 to 2.2%, and 2.2 to 3.2% in Tennessee. Now, one might argue, well, 1 to 2%, 2 to 3%, not such a big deal. Well, if it's a close race, obviously, it is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And so if you can suppress a certain percentage of the vote, particularly in certain areas, that can have a tremendous impact on the electoral outcome in any given election. And it's particularly important, obviously, in states like Iowa, which have traditionally been bellwether states and swing states that go either way. 2 to 3% in a state like California isn't going to matter because we know how they're going to vote, and the same thing has traditionally been true in a state like Texas or Mississippi since the Republicans took over the South. But in many parts of the country, this is an extremely significant factor.
Do you find that 2.2 to 3.2% specifically targets a certain party?
I don't know. I don't know what the study, how finely grained that study is. So I can't answer that question. It's a good question. I just don't have the answer for it. So the question is there voter suppression? And there is some evidence that we do have voter suppression. The question is, how important is it? And I don't think there's a clear answer on that, although I think philosophically, those who are more inclined to support the democratic process believe that any kind of voter suppression is something that's antithetical to our system of government, the way we talk about it, and the way we like to believe it operates. So next I want to turn to this issue of voter fraud.
I would say, if I can add something,
Yeah,
from what I understand from your talk,
I'm sorry.
it seems more directed. Voter suppression is more directed at many tough ID laws. It seems to me, what I got from you.
Yeah.
But there are more indirect ways. So there's in North Carolina that they cannot hold voting stations in the rural
Yeah.
which is more than we don't have proper documentation and everything. We're not getting transportation to them because they are.
I'll get to that in a minute. There are a lot of ways to suppress the vote. The point of this presentation is that the legal actions that have been taken have almost exclusively been on voter ID.
Right.
Okay.
They do it in many other
I mean, you can do things like close down polling places early.
That's what they've done. That's how they do it.
Yeah, you can make registration more difficult. There are multiple, but almost none of the laws that are designed to address the issue of fraud look at that particular issue. They're almost exclusively looking at photo ID at this point. Good point, though. It's absolutely an important point to make. So, and here we go right now. I mean, there are some different ways that you can have fraud in the system. You can have voter registration fraud. You can have problems with the voting systems themselves, as we clearly had in Florida in 2000. Polling places, locations, and hours can be a major issue. Poll worker training. I mean, oftentimes the poll workers may not simply know what the right procedure is. Or it may be malicious. It could be either or. And then this is the one where most of the laws are targeted. That's on this idea of impersonation. That is, this fear that certain people are voting who shouldn't be voting because they're not eligible for whatever reason. And then also you can have issues with voter tabulation, and this is where we get more into the whole cybersecurity issue that has become 6 possibilities for irregularities or fraud. The vast majority of legislation and legislative proposals have focused on the issue of voter impersonation. Yeah.
What's hanging chads? I guess I've heard that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You must be, yeah, you're younger. Well, in 2000, there was a very close election that was really determined by the state of Florida, George Bush and Al Gore. And the vote was so close that they had a recount. And the recount, what they used in many places in Florida was a punch system, okay? So you had a stylus, you punched a card, and so the question often became and the chad was that little piece that you were supposed to punch out. And if the chad wasn't completely out of it, do you count it or do you not count it? And that became a very major system of inquiry and debate. So that was one reason why hardly anybody uses that system anymore, because it created so much controversy. So, yeah.
I have a quick question
Sure.
for you. As far as voter identification or impersonation, I've talked to our local county workers, and they talk about dead people still being registered.
Yep.
Is that a national issue?
That's probably the biggest issue, is dead people still in the rolls. And that's one that hardly anybody seems to be that concerned about, except people who work in the polls. There's little evidence that dead people vote.
Is there any evidence of people using dead voters as a fraud?
There's not much. I mean, what they have found is that when they go back and they look at the records where they see that dead people voted, most often than not all the time, but most often than not, it's people who died after they voted. And they don't make that correlation when they just do their annual statistics. Okay. So what is the likelihood of, we looked at what's the likelihood of suppression. Now let's look at the likelihood of integrity based on voter impersonation. Washington Post article reports there are only 31 documented cases of voter impersonation in the United States from 2000 to 2014. Again, going back to New York University School of Law, they reported that nationwide between 2002 and 2005, only 24 people were convicted of illegal voting in federal elections, and no one was charged with voter impersonation. So of those that have been convicted, voter impersonation has not been an issue. A Pew Center study reported that there is a much greater need to improve voter registration data. The 2012 study revealed more than 1.8 million deceased people remain registered to vote nationwide. So, if there's an issue, I think that would be the issue. But we don't really have a good mechanism to clean that up, because in most places, when people die, there's no way of transferring that information or actually removing them from the voter registration.
Why is that so difficult?
Why is that a problem? If they're not voting, no one is impersonating these dead people vote. Who cares if we have dead people registered?
Well, that's not an issue.
I don't particularly care, except I kind of like clean records. and so, I don't care in the sense that I don't think there's fraud taking place, but I do think if you have a situation, particularly when we get into these cyber attacks, if you could have some hacker get in and identify a whole bunch of dead people somehow that are still in the rolls, that could be a mechanism for, imposing some kind of fraud. I guess and I don't mean to sound flip about it, but, I think most people who are in those offices probably feel like they have enough to do without, going over to see who's died and coming back and trying to figure that out, or there's just never been a demand for it. I mean, if the public demanded and felt strongly for it, I'm sure that public policymakers would make an initiative to see that that's changed, but that clearly hasn't been the case. There was anecdotal evidence that certainly in the old machine political days of large urban areas, that this did create a problem. The old saw in Chicago, vote early and vote often. How much reality there is to those charges is very undocumented. One of the more interesting cases actually is Lyndon Johnson when he first ran for the United States Senate down in Texas. There was one county, it was a very close race. It was nip and tuck all the way, and it came down to one county, and it turned out that Johnson essentially got every vote in that particular county. And there was a lot of, and he had a lot of cronies in that area, and there was a lot of suspicion that election was thrown in his direction back in the 1940s.
Was there any resolution to that suspicion?
No, he took office and became, a very powerful United States senator, and traditionally once these things, a resolution has been made, people let it go. There are many people that believe Al Gore should have been president of the United States, but generally the population accepted the fact that, look, if we got to get on with things. Somebody's got to be a winner, somebody's got to be a loser, and Gore conceded. The same thing. There were several people in Hillary Clinton's campaign that were trying to make the argument that she should contest the election, and she said, "No, we need to get over this." Even though she did win the popular vote by almost 3 million votes, she lost the Electoral College, and that's the way we count it in this country.
Now, somebody claimed that 5 million voters who voted illegally. Is there any credence to that claim?
No, none. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Even the Republicans in New Hampshire were pretty incensed when Trump was making these allegations that thousands of people were crossing the border and voting illegally. There's so many things unusual about this presidency that it's difficult. I don't want to get into that at this point. We can do that Q&A if you want, but it's always been the case that we've had people, once an election is over, we get on with it and people govern. And sometimes we have sore losers, but in this case we seem to have a sore winner. He can't let this past election go. He spends more time talking about Obama and some of these things in the past. That's just not the way most presidents operate. You want to say your policy agenda and move on, but that feeds into the whole notion of vote rigging, which he still talks about occasionally, and that's not helpful in a democratic system. When the winner says the system is rigged against me, it creates some real kind of issues that are difficult to reconcile. Here's another argument against why would you run the risk of going to jail to cast one extra vote? The probability of you having any impact whatsoever is so small compared to the risk that it makes virtually no sense from a logical point of view. But on the other hand, this did happen. You probably read about the case of the woman in Des Moines who voted twice for Donald Trump because she thought her first vote wasn't going to count. And so it does happen. And she's actually going to go on trial, scheduled to go on trial here later in the year. Despite the common belief that fraud occurs at least somewhat often in elections, social scientists have been unable to develop unambiguous measures of the incidence of fraud, and legal cases find very little hard evidence on the matter. So there's not that strong of a case for suppression. There's not that strong of a case for voter fraud. So it kind of makes one wonder, what's all the, why all the kerfuffle? So, but yeah, before we get into this other issue, it's important that we protect our democratic system to assure that people believe in the integrity of the system. If people start doubting the integrity of the electoral process, then that throws the whole system of democracy into a state of potential chaos. And so it is a very serious issue. It just seems as the way we're going about it at this particular point in time seems to be addressing a non-problem. And addressing a non-problem can sometimes create more noise in the system and more confusion than something that's real and potentially important, like, for example, perhaps figuring out how to get dead people off the voter registration rolls. So we've seen quite a bit about this in the news, and I thought it'd be important to look at this. On January 6th, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, on behalf of the American intelligence agencies, issued a declassified intelligence community assessment. Now again, this is unanimous among the intelligence communities. We assessed Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals would undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assessed Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. We have high confidence in these judgments. So that's not a trivial weak statement. That's should be a very troubling and profound statement to every American. This is a unanimous opinion of the United States intelligence community. We're talking about a foreign government that using this is from Comey, by the way, the former FBI director who was fired by President Trump. And you can certainly read that on your own. But again, it's a very strong, clear indication that professionals in this field believe that we've got to be very careful about making sure we protect our democratic processes from these outside intrusions. So the evidence suggests that Russia actively tried to intervene in the election, but this raises two additional questions. First, what was the nature and extent of that intervention? Okay. And second, what impact did it have? It's one thing to intervene, it's another thing whether that intervention was impactful in the outcome. Well, guess what? There's no clear answer to either question, but we'll look at a couple of things here. So what was the nature and extent of the intervention? Well, President Trump has essentially claimed that there was no Russian intervention. Yeah, so that's one side of the coin, and his supporters. He finally, this past week, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, he came out and acknowledged that, well, there may have been. And then on the other hand, you have the intelligent community assessment. Moscow Moscow's influence campaign followed a Russian messaging strategy that blends covert intelligence operations such as cyber activity with overt efforts by Russian government agencies, state-funded media, third-party intermediaries, and paid social media users or trolls. So, these are some of the means that the Russians are accused of intervening, conducting cyber operations. Russian military intelligence used means to engage in publicly releasing certain types of fake news. Again, this gets back to the whole fake news thing, to try to generate media spin.
I mean, they did have both bodies, but they are allowed to use those out for democracy.
There are a lot, I'm sorry?
They did have both bodies. Computer systems?
The Russians
Yeah.
have both parties.
Yes. But they are allowed only
Right.
one information to get out.
Yeah, I think that's, the evidence seems to, I'm not enough of an expert in the area to comment beyond that, but I'll take your word for that one. I mean, there's no doubt that from what the intelligence community assessment notes is that they were trying to favor Donald Trump's election over Hillary Clinton's in any way they possibly could. And then most problematic, I think, from my perspective, well, not most, but certainly it raises huge concerns about accessing information and trying to influence election boards. And then, of course, we have the more traditional means that the Russians use too, in terms of their own propaganda organs that they use. But we've been suspicious of the information that comes out of those for quite some time, and that seems to be not nearly as pernicious as some of these other potential means for intervening in our process. In June 2017, a number of media outlets reported that Russian operatives hacked into the Florida headquarters of VR Systems, a company which sells election-related digital software. A week before the election, the hackers sent emails to 122 state and local election officials across the country with malware designed to infiltrate the election infrastructure. On July 19th, a Department of Homeland Security official testified the Russian government tried to hack election-related computer systems in 21 states. So now we're into the Trump era administration, and even their own Homeland Security people are making reports of this nature. Well, okay, we can see that there was attempts to intervene. What impact did those attempts have? The question itself is problematic. On the one hand, acknowledging potential intervention in the electoral process calls into question the legitimacy of the process and the results. So just asking the question is already a delegitimizing kind of activity. On the other hand, if there's something going on here, we better find out about it and try to figure out what's going on so we can fix it. So it's a little bit of a no-win situation that both of these points of view have a delegitimizing effect on the confidence of the American public in the way we choose our political leaders. And that's not a good thing. I think I've already covered this. How real is the threat? Can our elections be compromised by cyber hackers, either foreign or domestic? Again, as in most complex issues, it depends upon who you ask. Some argue that an American electoral process diffuse that it would be difficult, if not impossible, for a systematic intervention in the electoral process that could affect the outcome. This is the argument about why a federal system is actually protecting us, because how can anybody figure out how to break into all of these systems and have an impact? Of course, the answer is you don't need to break into all the systems. You just need to figure out which ones are most important in terms of where the margins are thinnest. If you can figure out how to break into those, then you've done all the work that you need to do. I don't think anybody's going to spend a lot of time hacking into California or Texas, because it would be very difficult to change an outcome in any way that wouldn't be immediately suspicious. On the other hand, some argue that because we have such a hodgepodge, it's a very weak system, and it's easy for people to figure out. You know, it's kind of the old argument about the strength of a chain is that the chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and if you can figure out how to weave your way into some of these systems, then you can have a significant impact. And we need to do much more to make a more robust system so that we can defend our system of electing our officials. Cyber community experts seem to lean toward the vulnerability of the electronic systems, and I teach at Wartburg, as indicated earlier. We had a May term, I taught a May term course where we worked very closely with the senior team of American Family Insurance, a Fortune 500 company based in Madison, Wisconsin. Their CEO is one of our alums, Jack Saltzwell. But in any case, we had an opportunity to sit in on their board meeting, their board of directors meeting, and one of the things that they're most concerned about is cybersecurity for their business. And they've contracted and spent very large sums of money with the cybersecurity industry, which is a very large and growing business out there. The cybersecurity expert said, no, you're not going to prevent this stuff. What you got to figure out is how you're going to react to it when it happens. He said there isn't any company in the world that's not vulnerable to these kind of attacks, and it will happen. What you've got to figure out what to do is how you respond to it. And the analogy he used was the whole thing, when American or United Airlines pulled that guy off the plane, and then the first response to that, well, people are still talking about that. But something quite similar happened in Delta about a week or two later, and they handled the situation completely differently, and nobody's talking about that at all. Nobody hardly remembers that it even took place. And so they're talking about this at a meta level in terms of marketing strategy and how it can impact your business. But many of those same kind of principles are at work when we're talking about protecting our form of government. The Russians really were engaged in a pattern of attack against the machinery of the election, not really a pattern of propaganda or information warfare and selective leaking. The question is, how far did they get in that pattern of attack, and were they successful? And again, we don't really have good answers to this, and we may never cycle around. Absolutely possible that the Russians influenced last year's election, according to this particular expert. And then this is a book published in 2012, rather prescient. If we don't fix our badly broken system before the next major presidential election, we're going to be hacked into. It might not just be Russia. It might be North Korea, China, Iran, or partisans in our own country. So that's my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I don't know if people want to have a discussion or raise some issues.
I have a question for you. Right before the election, everyone, especially when Donald Trump's rhetoric was about rigged election results, you spoke to Paul Page or your county election officials, they all said there's no evidence that anyone could be hacking into our system, no evidence. Continued on after the election, after all those results came in. Now you have all these state and federal officials saying we actually did have a credible threat against our election process. I can see where a lot of members of the public would be completely confused and a little taken aback. Right before the election, they're trying to pound it in that there's no threat to your vote, and now there's potentially a threat to votes. How is that being handled, or is it being handled at all by parties?
Well, I think the best example of that, and it's just starting to come out now, because the Obama administration knew this was going on.
It was published in the news.
Pardon?
They did say in the news before the election back in September, or back in October, just before the controversial date, the NBC date, there was a whole report on how the Russians were interfering in the elections.
Right.
But it did not gain much ground because of all the double coverage of that NBC. Trump was just snatching. You know what I'm talking about.
I think the point to be made is that government officials were worried about spooking the public, because on election night, when Hillary Clinton conceded, most of the country felt that, okay, Donald Trump is going to be our next president. Like it or not, that's the way our system works. And if there would have been a lot of noise out there about, we don't know if this is a legitimate election. I mean, some of you I know are old enough to remember 2000. And that was a very chaotic time. There was a lot of tension in the system in trying to figure out what was legitimate, what wasn't, and I think we're still feeling after effects of that with all this negative bipartisanship that we see going on all the time. So there was a debate within the Obama cabinet about how much do we say about this. And to be fair to them, I don't think anybody knew at that time exactly how serious the problem was.
Well, they all assumed Clinton was going to win regardless.
Well, that was part of it too. There were some assumptions made about, well, we'll figure this out after the election.
Maybe I wasn't clear what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say, even before the election, September, October, the intelligence community made it known to the public that there was Russian interference. What Obama did not choose to say was it was Putin who personally directed, that was what came in the news recently from the Washington Post, because he didn't want to look like he was trying to...
Right, they were very sensitive about looking like they were trying to tip the election one way or the other. Yeah.
But these news came just before that controversial NBC tape, so it got hidden. Nobody paid attention to it, it really was the sensational news of...
Yeah. Well, it probably also depends on what Trump had to say that day in terms of what the government.
Going back to the issue of voter registration, isn't a lot of the evidence, or at least the speculation now, that hacking wasn't an attempt to switch votes, but to just disrupt the process, to get in and screw around with the registration so that the process slowed down, so that the lines lengthened, so that more people had to use provisional ballots or file their names as they should have been?
I don't know enough about the details in that, because most of it's still classified. I mean, what's public is very limited compared to what is still classified. I will say this, when this first broke, people were generally under the assumption, first of all, I think there's this kind of myopic stereotype that many Americans have, well, even if the Russians tried it, they'd screw it up somehow and we'd be able to do a good job of it. But as things have come out and time has gone on and we learn more about it, it's clear that the level of concern has increased. It seems to have increased at all levels and will probably continue to rise. In other words, we don't hear the local officials saying quite as clearly now as they did right after the election, well, there was no problem in our, in our county or in our precinct, because now there's some evidence that, well, yeah, there might have been some problems there. So, yeah.
I will say one more thing, which is controversial. On a personal level, I'm upset how the Russians interfered and swayed the election to somebody I'm not supportive of. But not to be too hypocritical, I mean, the USA does interfere into a lot of other countries' elections as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. I mean, our history of interference in elections may not be cyber attacks, but you don't have to look too far what happened in Iran in 1954
Or South America.
in South America almost every time you turn around. So, we're by no means clean in this at all. And, it's kind of every country tries to tilt the geopolitical atmosphere in a way that they think is going to favor them. And we just have a new tool. But what's interesting to your point is that these latest hacking tools that are on the market creating all these disruptions around the globe, almost all of them are traced to the NSA. That people have been able to hack in, or maybe there's someone on the inside, a malcontent on the inside, but there was just a report that came out today how much of this malware is, you can probably find it in today's New York Times, is incontrovertibly linked to NSA activity. And the argument that they've made is the NSA spent billions more on developing offensive capability in terms of cyber attacks than they ever did about protecting what they had developed. And obviously, that's a very critical problem. I mean, why worry about developing your own malware, where if you can go in and steal the best people in the world and get it out there for other people to use? I mean, that's pretty significant oversight, in my opinion.
I have one more question. Going back to the Iowa law that's just been introduced, there's been a lot of concern, I'm sure you see it at Wartburg, in college communities. And then I also see a little bit of concern for teachers at boarding schools or issues like that about the residency, proof of residency requirement. College students who live in dorms don't necessarily have an address or utility bill or anything like that. They have a P.O. box where their mail is delivered to. And there's some other housing situations like that. Is that being addressed by Iowa at all?
Well, they do have a mailing address on our campus.
Okay.
I mean, they have a street address.
I know at Simpson College in Indianola, they don't have a residency address.
Okay.
They have a C Street mailing address, but that doesn't prove what building you live in. That's been a concern down there.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we'll see what this new law, how it affects, but it's always been a challenge. I think it depends on the county to a certain extent. Bremer County, and the auditor's office down there is controlled by a Republican, and the stereotype is that college students tend to vote more liberal. I can testify that that's not true, but that's a perception. But she's been very great to work with in terms of helping us make sure we have satellite voting on campus, helping make sure that students get registered. And if we want to believe in a democratic process, in some ways it's less important who wins or loses than that we have integrity in the process. I mean, if I'm on the losing end of something I think is fair, then I've lost. That means other people had different ideas, and so they get to do it, and maybe they'll be right, maybe they won't. Next time I'll give my chance. But if we start questioning the process itself, that's when you get into this kind of gridlock environment. Yeah.
So based on the evidence that we have now as a public, do you think that
that is public, I don't know. I haven't studied it well enough to. I only started this project really when Kate called me because it's something that I've been meaning to look into, but I certainly haven't. First of all, it's not my area of study. I'm kind of approaching this. I am a political scientist, but my focus tends to be more on public policy and public law, not electoral behavior. But it's certainly an interesting area and one that's going to be. We'll learn a lot more about it, but I don't feel confident enough about my own opinion to express it publicly at this point. Yeah.
I can sort of understand the rationale for requiring IDs and registry or residency proof. Well, what's the rationale as far as fighting voter fraud for reducing the length of time you can vote or the number of polls or any of the other things that were also part of this? What was the purported rationale?
For the purported rationale?
Well, for reducing the amount of time, for reducing the length of
Oh,
time. for absentee
why
ballots,
reducing
the number of polling places, for any of these things that are going to reduce access without increasing identity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you vote early, a lot of this stuff, typically many of these new restrictions, we'll have to see how it plays out in Iowa, but didn't even apply if you voted early or voted absentee or something like that. I mean, if you voted absentee, you can't meet some of these requirements. And so there are a lot of interesting issues to figure out in that regard. The rationale for limiting early voting, I have no idea. I haven't heard an argument why they wanted to do
In
that.
North Carolina, they say, oh, save the state money and budget.
Yeah, sure, that's always the argument. It'll save us money, but I'm not sure what exactly money
It's an excuse, but that's what they say. Oh yeah, we're trying to save the state money and all, trying to be more efficient.
I mean, to me, a bigger issue, I think we need to figure out how to make sure that the polling places stay open longer. I mean, the reason why so many people vote early now is because nobody wants to stand in line on a cold November night, until God knows when, and then you get up to the line and say, oh, sorry, the polls are closed. And that's really much of the discretion of the people at that particular polling place, and that's a problem. So if you've got variation in some places letting people vote longer than others, what's that all about? So there are a lot of issues that I think this has brought to our attention, and I hope we'll have the courage to address them in a bipartisan manner that puts the state of democracy first, as opposed to the state of partisan politics. Now, I'm realistic enough to know that in this particular climate, the probability of that is pretty low, but, hope springs eternal, so. Okay, thanks a lot, appreciate it.
All right, thank you guys for coming. Again, if you have any suggestions for a future event, feel free to leave a suggestion on a postcard, set it up underneath the PowerPoint. Join our Facebook group if you haven't already, Cedar Talks Charles City. Enjoy your dinner. Thanks for coming.